right, welcome back. Here's the question I am asking today in Christians and Racial Reconciliation. Should I be bothered that my church is all white? Okay? Since you didn't have anything else controversial and heavy to think about today, here's this, all right? Should I be bothered that my church is all white? This question was posed to me by a friend who lives in a small town, and a town where there are almost no African Americans at all. Pretty much the entire town is white. Now, I'm not going into why that happens. Obviously, there are some reasons that can play into that. But I just want to just recognize where it is and talk about it. First of all, if your church is all white, it should bother you. It should. Now, it should bother you less if you are in a place where you don't have African Americans in your neighborhood. But if you do, if your church is not reflective of your neighborhood, yes, you should be concerned about that. Let me tell you why. The reason you should be concerned about that is because it is entirely appropriate for you to be concerned for the mission of your church, all right? For the mission of your church. And the mission of your church is to reach the world around you for the glory of God and to spread His good news to the people that are there in your neighborhood. You are not called to some other neighborhood, you're called to yours. And if your church doesn't reflect diversity that is in your neighborhood, yes, you should be worried about that. All right? Now, if your church does reflect the diversity of your neighborhood in that your neighborhood's all white and your church is all white, I'm not saying that you need to go out somewhere and attempt to find some token black person, because people who are of color despise and feel badly about being a token person. They don't enjoy that. They don't like it, and I don't blame them. I don't like to be in that situation either, and used in that kind of way. It feels badly. But I want to talk to you about not that a lot of times we don't know how to contextualize ourselves to reach the neighborhood around us. A lot of times we don't know how to contextualize as a church to reach minority groups. And there are some people, maybe in your church, maybe you're even one of them, who don't wish to know how to contextualize. Or when they find out what it will take, they are unwilling to pay that price. Many people are resistant, not because they hate black people or even think that whites are inherently superior. They just want black people to do all of the work to approach and come over into their world in order that they may not have to change anything. So all they want black people to do is enter their world, adopt their values, speak as they speak, joke as they joke, worship as they worship, vote as they vote, and not seek to marry their sons or daughters, and everything would be fine and they would be able to be included. But that's a problem, ain't it? That's a problem, because that doesn't look at all like Jesus' mission to earth looked. And He said, "As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you." So a lot of people want to simply maintain the status quo, preserve their culture and their comfort level, and avoid the discomfort of contextualizing themselves to reach their community. And that's a problem. And you know what? Let me just acknowledge something. It is discomfort. Sometimes severe discomfort to contextualize yourself to reach your community. Most people are not aware of the enormous emotional and spiritual sacrifices that are made by missionaries to another culture to reach those people. In fact, my uncle is a counselor to missionaries. He's a pastor to them. He helps them process culture shock. And he counsels with them and helps them walk through it and understand it and to stay emotionally resilient through the depth of surrender and death to self it takes to become a missionary to another culture, to cross cultural lines. And so what I would suggest is that avoidance of culture shock is the largest way in which the Christian church is responsible for what we are currently facing in the gap between white and black churches. But evangelical Christians, white Christians, have left the cities by and large, and they refuse to engage and refuse to contextualize. And into that gap between black and white church has rushed a whole collection of politicians greedy for power. And they have grabbed a hold of those interest groups because anytime they see division, they see a potential interest group. If there's a division between groups of people, they can grab this interest group, make them fear the other one, and tie up their vote, perhaps for elections and generations to come. And into those places, those politicians many times have had a godless agenda. They're willing to say Black Lives Matter and anchor that to an agenda that promotes all kinds of immorality and the destruction of biblical values. And another generation, meanwhile, as evangelical Christians follow that, another generation is left left fatherless and lost. Laws stay unjust, and the nation, our nation, pays the price for the unwillingness of the church to do hard things. That's a problem. What are we supposed to do about it? Well, I would just tell you, you should be concerned about it if your church doesn't reflect your community. You should be willing to sacrifice. You should be willing to get out of your comfort zone, cross the railroad tracks. We train Christians and missionaries to go across the world, to learn another language, to get used to another culture. We pay thousands upon thousands of dollars to invest in them to reach countries and cultures across the world. And I would suggest to you that we can do the same thing for the cultures across the tracks. Okay. It's going to take investment. It's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take death to self. But then we're holiness people. We believe in that. I think we do. Don't we? I hope you do. And I would just tell you that as we go into all of this process, as we think about this, let me just encourage you, don't give up that reality. Don't give up that idea. Don't give up in your search to try to contextualize and try to find where you fit and how the mission of God goes forward with people who are not like you in terms of their skin color. So that's a crucially important thing that I want you to understand. I want to share with you a quick story by a friend of mine named Velma. Velma Njipa was a young lady from Papua New Guinea, and she was shocked when she came here that there were no black people in the holiness churches that she attended. And I'll read you her words. She said, "I was shocked there were no black people in all the holiness churches that I attended. And this really bothered me in the years that I traveled for public relations for a Bible school. I remember crying my eyes out after service in one of the holiness churches down south when I realized the people that went to church were middle-class white people, but the church was in a black neighborhood with many run-down houses, and I didn't feel right singing when I was the only black person in the congregation. Yes, maybe black people do have a different way of worshiping, but if Christ was who we say he was, I didn't understand why so many black people in that community were never reached to come to church. I just felt that something was wrong, and I've always thought long and hard about what I saw and experienced. I think what she's saying here is not that she was treated badly. I don't think that your church would do that to a black person. I don't think so. What I'm saying is that there's a weight that comes when you realize that nobody is specifically reaching out to people that look like me. That is heavy for Velma to carry, and it ought to be. And I think that if we are godly people, we will offer our shoulder to that load and bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. God bless you. Thank you for being with me today.